Why is it a little low?
A good yontiv. A freilichen hey Teves. L'chaim levracha. Okay, let's get started. Let's say l'chaim. Rose, you want to say l'chaim with me? Want some mashke? No.
No.
Okay. Want to sit in my lap? Chayel, come. The show come. Let's bring. Let's say l'chaim. L'chaim levracha. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam shakilnu yavarei. Yehuda is in l'chaim Yehuda. Zalman, Chaya, come, let's go for bring. Okay. Tonight is Hey Teves. It is the time of divine grace and mercy where Hashem sent the miraculous victory to the Svarim, to the holy books of our Rebbe. And it's not just a holiday that happened then, but as the Arizal says, Hayam Mil Niskar Menaisim, these days are remembered, and because they are remembered, they reoccur. The divine revelation that happened then was also repeated and brought again to the world today. At that time, as we'll see, God willing, later on, the Rebbe said it was a time of divine grace, and anyone could send any letter they want to Hashem, the Rebbe says. Send any letter you want to God, the Rebbe will bring the letters to the resting place of the previous Rebbe, and you'll send the letter to Hashem, and he'll place it there to be given over to your request to Hashem. So it's a time of divine grace and mercy, a time of great blessing. Let's begin with Sing L'chaim, as the previous Rebbe revealed. And when Jews get together and they say L'chaim, it's not just about wishing each other well. It's about wishing all the Yidden well. So it's like L'chaim for Refuah Shlema Kreva, all those in Refuah Shlema Kreva, and for the good news of Bias and Mashiach Tzidkenu, take from your mamish L'chaim V'rach. As we always begin with a story, I want to share with you. Come here, I can't see you over there. Please, just sit over here. It's hard for me to see you over there. Come here, come closer. I'm waiting. Okay, no problem. I want to share with you 3 incredible stories. The first story is to highlight exactly what happened on Hey Teves. There was a great challenge to chassidus Chabad and to our Rebbe, in a time of confusion. In the language of the Rebbe, there was a time of Shem Elokim, a time of divine concealment. Just like Yosef experienced hardship and confusion, and then Hashem sent him a great salvation, so too is what happened in Hey Teves, a time of confusion, but then Hashem sent Gili Shem Havaya. There was an elevation and a revelation of godliness that was far beyond what was there before. It was Didan Natzach. The words Didan Natzach are actually from the Medrash. Talmud says a story about a man who, a tzaddik, who was visited by an angel. And the angel told him, I am a good angel. That's what good angels say, right? I'm a good angel. And there is another not such a nice angel coming to town. And let me tell you what we should do about this not good angel. When the not good angel comes to town, you should get together by the riverbank with all the men, women, and children in the town. And everyone should bring pots and pans and all kinds of noisemakers. Can you make noise, Rosie? Do not make noise. And they should all bring all the pots and pans next to the riverbank. And I give you the signal, said this good angel to the rabbi, then you should all scream together, Didan Notzach, victory is ours, victory is ours. That's what you should scream. And sure enough, they all get together by the river bank, and they all screamed together, Didan, at the right time, when the angel said it's the time, when the other angel, the not good angel, was coming, they all screamed together, Didan Notzach, Didan Notzach, Didan Notzach, victory is ours. And this chased away all the negativity that town was challenged with at the time. Rabbi Springer, he said, this is not just a story, this is a story of our lives. Each of us has our own challenges, our own yitzhahara, our own things we deal with. And just like the Talmud says, you have to scream "Dida Natzach," you have to scream that the victory is ours. So too, a Jew has to look at all kinds of challenges Hashem sends him and says, "I know who's going to win. The victory is ours. I know that we are Yidden and we're Jews, and Hashem is with us, and victory is ours. Nothing that could stop each of us from being where we have to be. Yes, there are concealments. Hashem sends sometimes a great challenge, and there's a concealment, there's a confusion. But it's all a preparation for the Dan Natzach. And the way we get there is by saying and declaring that victory is ours. I want to share with you 3 stories. Okay, fine, 4 stories. As far as how many stories? We'll start with 4 stories. Let's see where we go. In the time of the Alter Rebbe, there was a certain sorcerer who lived in Lyozhne. The previous Rebbe doesn't say the details of what the sorcerer did. He just says very briefly that the sorcerer did something that caused the Alter Rebbe to do a miracle. This was something which blew everyone's mind, and they were certain that the Alter Rebbe was also engaging in some kind of witchcraft or something like that, and they were thinking that he's going against the Torah. So they summoned the Alter Rebbe to a court in Vitebsk, nearby Vitebsk, where there was a more prominent Bezdin. They summoned the Alter Rebbe to this court to defend how he made this miracle. He must be resorting to witchcraft, something like that. So the Alter Rebbe said to the Bezdin, I cannot tell you, I have nothing to say. I'll just tell you what I heard from my teacher, Mezitcha Magid, what he heard from his teacher, the Baal Shem Tov. In the time of the Baal Shem Tov, there was something very difficult in the city of Brod, and the Baal Shem Tov made a miracle there. And because of the miracle that the Baal Shem Tov displayed then at that time, the people of Brody also wanted to excommunicate. They wanted to give a cherim on the Baal Shem Tov. You know what a cherim means? No one should talk to him, no one should be around him. That's what they wanted the Baal Shem Tov. So Baal Shem Tov said that whatever I did with the participation of the Talmudic sage in the Talmud, Abaye. And Baal Shem Tov explained. It says in the Torah, when Korach came to challenge the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu, it says in the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu turned to God and said, if God will create an opening in the earth, and then this story happened where Korach and his men were swallowed up in the earth. So the Baal Shem Tov said, V'im Bria Yivra Hashem, those 4 words, V'im Bria Yivra Hashem, are an acronym for the word Abaye. Abaye is the one who assisted me to do whatever the Baal Shem Tov did. So they asked the Baal Shem Tov, V'im Bria Yivra Hashem, the word V'im begins with the letter Vav. Abaye is Aleph, Beis, Yud, Yud. So how are you saying that there is a Vav in the name of Abaye? Baal Shem Tov said, actually, Abaye himself cannot do anything without the Vav. The Vav is, just like the letter Vav is shaped in a way that descends from above to below, so too the Torah descends, as I just recently learned in Tanya, the Torah is compared to water and descends from the higher godly worlds, and it comes down to this world. So Abaye cannot do anything without the oral Torah. Abaye revealed the oral Torah, and because of that, the Talmud says that there's nothing new under the sun. So how can Moshe Rabbeinu make a new opening in the earth? There's nothing new under the sun. So the Talmud answers that this was there. Stop making faces, big Rose. The Talmud answers this was something that God created during the 6 days of creation, right before sundown. And it's only that through Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer, through Moses' prayer, he caused that this opening of the earth should then be brought there at that time. And the Baal Shem Tov concluded that with the power of Torah, you could open up heaven and you can open up hell. And then the Baal Shem Tov said that just like Korach was someone who was Hanoyadim al Hashem, he was against Yud Kei Vavke. Yud Kei Vavke is the name of Hashem, which is associated with miracles and wonders. So too, it says Baal Shem Tov, it says in the Talmud, the children of Korach never died. So Baal Shem Tov said there are people like Korach in every generation, and I'll tell you a good story. Well, 1 second, Rose, don't run away. This story is not as interesting as the next one. I'll have a more interesting story in a second. Don't worry. There are people of Korach were against Yud Kei Vav Kei, they were against the supernatural, so too the people in every generation like that. And that's why the Baal Shem Tov said the Parsha of Korach is next to Parsha of Chukas. Chukas is a Torah portion which talks about the supernatural. And there are supernatural miracles and supernatural revelation of Hashem that Hashem wants to bring to the world. And there are people who oppose this, who don't want there to be a revelation of Hashem in this world. That's what Baal Shem Tov said. And Alter Rebbe shared this, and this was accepted by this Beis Din. The Alter Rebbe himself, after his release from prison, he was, according to the Beis Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe was freed from prison through the efforts of a prominent rabbi who told the Alter Rebbe, and he wants the Alter Rebbe that he should visit various Gdei Yisrael, various great tzaddikim, to prove the authenticity of his position. There was one exchange that the Alter Rebbe had with a certain Rabbi Yosef Kolboy. Rabbi Yosef Kolboy was called Kolboy. Kolboy means he had everything inside of himself. He knew the entire Torah. Hakol, all the Torah was within him. And the Alter Rebbe was speaking to him, Rabbi Yosef Kolboy, about the Baal Shem Tov. And he told the Rabbi Yosef Kolboy that Rabbi Yosef Kolboy said something very disrespectful about the Baal Shem Tov. And the Alter Rebbe responded to Rabbi Yosef Kolboy and told him that seeing the Baal Shem Tov is even greater than seeing Elijah the prophet. Seeing the Baal Shem Tov is even greater than seeing Eliyahu Hanavi. And he says, where do you know that from? How do you get that from? So the Alter Rebbe said it says in the Talmud. The previous Rebbe, all the stories I'm sharing are from the writings of the previous Rebbe. He said that when Rabbi Yosef Kolboy heard this, he's like, which Gemara? Rabbi Yosef knew the entire Gemara like his fingertips. So which Gemara are you referring to? So the Alter Rebbe said, it says about Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, the Talmud says, was one of the 7 people who merited to enter heaven alive. He merited to go to Gan Eden while still alive. So Eliyahu Hanavi said, when Yeshua ben Levi came to heaven, he said, Panu derech labar levoi, make room for the son of Levi. Make room for the son of Levi. So Baal Shem Tov said like this. The word Levi means to connect. The role of Baal Shem Tov was to connect the Neshamas Yisrael, to connect Jewish souls to Hashem. And when Mashiach will come, we will see what the Baal Shem Tov really did. That's the role of Baal Shem Tov is Levi. He's Bar Levi. He's about making a connection of the Neshamas to Hashem. Eliyahu Hanavi, when he tried to reveal a secret of how Mashiach will come, the Talmud says that he was punished and he was whipped because he tried to reveal a secret. And the Baal Shem Tov reveals many secrets. And despite the many secrets that Baal Shem Tov revealed, not only was he not punished, on the contrary, he was blessed. That's what the Alter Rebbe told Rabbi Yosef Kolboy. So Rabbi Yosef Kolboy told the Alter Rebbe, that's the Baal Shem Tov. But you're 3 generations after the Baal Shem Tov. So how do you have any connection to the Baal Shem Tov if you're not in the same time? So the Alter Rebbe said, there's a halacha, when you pour something from one cup to another, and there is something non-kosher in the cup below and something kosher in the cup above. So the Talmud says nitzach chibur, what's that called? The flow of water connects the cups. So therefore, if one of them is not kosher, it causes the other cup also to be not kosher. So the Alter Rebbe said, this is true in the negative. This is true in the non-kosher. If this is true in the non-kosher, how much more so is this true on the positive? As the Talmud says, Meruba mida toiv, mida poranus, that the attribute of good is even greater than the attribute of the negative. So if there is a connection through 2 things which are negative, by one pouring over the other, how much more so is this true in the positive sense? The Alter Rebbe concluded, and he said, the Baal Shem Tov is always pouring upon us his holy words. And because Baal Shem Tov is always pouring this upon us, said Alter Rebbe, so we are always connected to the Baal Shem Tov. And this is something which is, Alter Rebbe said, he's pouring upon us until the coming of Mashiach. Until the covering of Mashiach, the Baal Shem Tov is always pouring upon us. And therefore, we're always connected to the Baal Shem Tov. This is very relevant to Hey Teves because the opposing side that said that the Rebbe should not have, that the one who stole the books was saying that the Lubavitch is inactive, there is no Lubavitch anymore. And the Alter Rebbe said that the Baal Shem Tov is always pouring upon us, and therefore there is no such thing as a separation between us and the Baal Shem Tov, and from the Baal Shem Tov we go straight to Bias HaMashiach. This, Rosie, you following so far? Don't run away. Don't run away. Come here. So I just want to share with you, come here, Rosie, a story that highlights this idea of the flow from Baal Shem Tov to the Alter Rebbe, until our Rebbe, until Bias HaMashiach. Rosie, come here. I'll tell you the story that I told you last night. This time you'll hear all the details you never heard here before. What? Starting right now. Come here. Go under. Okay. So the Alter Rebbe, after the passing of the Mizitcha Magid, the yard site of the Mizitcha Magid brought a lot of the closest disciples, the Mizitcha Magid, to meet together. And they daven Shabbos together, and they Farbrengen Shabbos together. The Alter Rebbe describes who was there and who davened, and what a kind of incredible experience it was. If you have it was an all-star chazan. The Alter Rebbe was chazan for Mincha. The Rabbi Kalisker was a chazan for other prayers, and there was an incredible gathering of the greatest students of the Mizitcha Magid. And after this gathering, they together, the middle of Haradok and bottom of Kalisk and the Alter Rebbe discussed together what should be the plan for the Chassidim after the passing of Mizitcha Magid. And they, for 3 days, Yitas Kislev, his anniversary, the passing of the Magid, and after his passing, after the day of the yards, and they're celebrating together, they spoke together for 3 days and made a plan. And the Alter Rebbe traveled back to Liozna. When he came back to Liozna, it was the same setup as this year. It was a Friday. Hanukkah started on a Thursday night. And the Alter Rebbe, although he was very tired from the journey, he came back from the journey on a Thursday night, on the first night of Hanukkah, and he celebrated the Chassidim, and he shared Torah. And there were a lot of people. The Frierdiker mentions about 20 cities where people traveled from to be with the Alter Rebbe right after this event, right after the first yards of the Magid. It seems like that they knew that the Alter Rebbe was going to be the next Rebbe, and that's why they came to him. And that Shabbos, Alter Rebbe shared Torah again. And then came Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos of Chanukah, Motzei Shabbos Chanukah. And the Alter Rebbe didn't usually participate in the Malava Malka in public, but that Motzei Shabbos he did. And he comes out to the Chassidim, and he's sharing Torah, and he's very joyous. And then a woman walks in, and there was a great tumult. What was the story? What had happened? It happened was like this. In a few miles away from Liozna, there was a widow who had a son and 2 daughters. One of her daughters was married to a very great Torah scholar, but he had one fault. His fault was he was very arrogant. Now, his mother-in-law, the widow, she had she had a little tavern and an inn, and all of the neighbors, non-Jewish neighbors, would come and they would drink vodka, and including the local priest. And this young man, who was very knowledgeable in Torah, he would help out also in this inn. And he would help out in the inn, and he would serve people, and he got to know this priest. And the priest was very impressed with the knowledge of this young man. So impressed that he told others about it, and he would frequent the inn, coming back again just to talk to this guy. And in fact, every single day, he would come and he would talk to this brilliant Torah scholar. And every time he came, he would compliment him. Say, "Wow, it's so amazing! You're so smart. You're so gifted. You're such a genius. This is amazing." And he would constantly feed into this guy's arrogance and make him feel really good. At that time, Liozna actually belonged to Poland. Liozna moved back and forth between Poland and Russia. At that time, in general, in Poland, Poland had a very good climate for the Jewish people at that time. In fact, everyone said the word Poland is native of 2 words, Poland. The Jewish people said, here in Poland, we will rest, we will be comfortable in Poland. So Poland at that time was so wonderful that many non-Jews wanted to be Jewish too. But because our Torah doesn't make it so easy to convert, so no one really did convert. But unfortunately, when a Jew tried to convert to Christianity, so all the priests would really, really work on make sure that they caught this prize of a Jew converting to their religion. So anyways, this guy would every day would talk to this priest, and some Torah scholars who passed by the inn, passed by the tavern, they noticed his friendship between the priest and the guy. They said, listen, you got to watch out for this guy. You shouldn't talk to him so much. And he just scorned them. It doesn't matter what you guys are saying. You don't really know me. You don't know him. Leave us alone. Now, one day, the priest comes into the inn and he says, I want to tell you something. I was in Vitebsk, and I met the bishop of this entire region. And I told the bishop about you. And he's very, very fascinated with you. He wants you to come visit him in his mansion. And he wants to talk to you. He really wants to hear from you. Can you please come? And the priest came again with two of his other friends. And they again tried to convince the guy to come with him. And after they visited him twice and told him about this, he agreed to go. And he went to visit the bishop. When he came to the bishop, he spoke to the bishop, and he spent quite some time with the bishop. He asked him to stay over. One of the local priests in Vitebsk offered that he could stay in his house. And for several days, they talked and talked. And every time they talked, the bishop would tell everyone, he won, he's smarter than me. And they made the guy feel like $1 million. He really loved the honor and prestige they were giving him. Everyone was talking, oh, wow, this guy is so brilliant. How Jews are so brilliant, how the Torah is so brilliant, and this guy is so smart. And it made him feel really, really good. He came back home, and he didn't tell anybody where he was, but he was in a very, very, very uplifted by his visit there. And in the summertime of that year, there was a new monastery that was erected in one of the towns near Liozna, and the bishop was invited to go to inaugurate this new monastery. And when he went to visit the monastery, he also went to the towns nearby, near Liozna, and he also went with all of his entourage to visit the tavern and to see this guy. And when all the non-Jews in this little town saw how much honor that the bishop is giving to this Jew, their esteem for him knew no bounds. Here, this guy, they were really, really impressed with how much honor the bishop is giving him, and they invited him to come back again to visit the bishop. So after Sukkot, he went to visit the bishop's mansion. He stayed at the bishop's mansion for some time, and he came back home. Again, he was very elated, and he stayed for a few days, and he went back. A letter arrives at his home day before Hanukkah. He hasn't come back. Day before Hanukkah, a letter arrives at his home, and his mother-in-law and his sisters-in-law were illiterate. They didn't really know what the letter said. But their brother, who had gone to a yeshiva, had come back for Shabbos Hanukkah, and he was able to read the letter. And he was shocked. The letter says, Velvel is in the bishop's mansion, and he wants to shmadzich, he wants to convert to Christianity. Velvel wrote in the letter how they promised him that if he'll become one of the bishop's people, he will be very honored, he'll be considered very prestigious, and they'll give him anything he wants. And so it's really a great opportunity. He's inviting his wife to come join him in the bishop's mansion. So the widow and her two daughters, although it was snowing, it was very cold, after Shabbos, they went right away to Liozna. They lived a few miles away from Liozna, and they come to the Bais Bezalel, to come to the shul of the Alter Rebbe. When they arrived, they broke out in tears and they screamed out, Rebbe, help us. The Alter Rebbe leaned on his holy hands in a state of dveikos, and the Alter Rebbe said, like you, Rosie, so lean on your hands, yes. And the Alter Rebbe said, I cannot help you. All I could do is tell you a story that happened with my teacher, the Mezitcha Maggid. Mezitcha Maggid time in Zitcha Magid in the winter of Tuf Kuf Chaf Tes, the Alter Rebbe said. I was at that time living in Mizrich, and there was a nearby city where there was a guy who unfortunately had this crazy idea. He wanted to convert to Christianity. And his father was very upset. And his father came to Mizrich and he told the Zitcha Magid what's going on, how his son wants to convert to Christianity. He had this crazy idea. And he wanted a blessing for his son. So Zitcha Magid entered a state of Tevekus, entered a state of spiritual ecstasy. And he said, a teaching on the pasuk, a soul that sins. Nefesh kisechata, a soul that sins. He said this teaching. And then the Magid said they should choose 10 people to say Tehillim the whole entire night. They should stay up all night and say Tehillim. So people stayed up all night. The Alter Rebbe said, I was one of the people. Yeah, you know, very good. So the Alter Rebbe and 9 other people stayed up all night saying Tehillim. And in the morning, a man arrives in the synagogue, and you know who it was, Rosie, right?
Yeah, the person I wanted to become non-Jewish.
Right. So the Alter Rebbe said the story, and he said how this person, when he came, he stayed there for a week. He visited the Zitcha Magid, and how this helped him. The Alter Rebbe is then benched. He didn't say anything. He benched. He went to his room. So right away, the chassidim understood that this is a message for them. 10 chassidim stayed up that night. The guys like David Issaver, you know, the guys who are always volunteering to help people. David Issaver stayed up that night, saying the whole Tehillim. And when they stayed, the widow and her 2 daughters stayed also till the morning. And then by daybreak, the widow and the 2 daughters went. They left. And a short while after they left, a man arrives in the synagogue. And everyone knew who the man was. And when the man when he came in the synagogue, sees everybody crying, he also started crying. He took a Tehillim, started crying. And he stayed the week after Hanukkah. It was a similar setup to this year. Shabbos, Hanukkah, Friday was Hanukkah. And he stayed after the Malava Malka was the last month of Shabbos, in other words. And then the week after Hanukkah, he left. He stayed the week of Hanukkah, he left the week after Hanukkah, and he became one of the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. A similar story that happened with our Rebbe. There is a emissary of the Rebbe in Massachusetts, Rabbi Alter Bucket, who had someone in his synagogue who, unfortunately, he had this idea in his head. What do you want to be? Guess what you want to be, Rosie? You have an idea? Non-Jewish, you're right. And Rabbi Bucket brought him to the Rebbe, and he comes in front of the Rebbe, and he didn't really think he needs a blessing to get out of this, because this is what he wanted to do. But Rabbi Bucket told the Rebbe, this is what's going on, and the Rebbe said to him, bring him to Taten, bring him to your father. His father lived, I believe, on President in Utica area, and he brings him to his father. Tells his father that the Rebbe said to bring him. So his father put on his hat and his kapata, and he waits outside. Literally, in a few minutes, a guy comes out with his father, and they are, let's go back. Let's drive back to Massachusetts. And he says to the guy, so what do you think? I'm not going to do that. It's crazy. Of course not. He says, really? Well, what did my dad tell you? Like, what did my dad tell you that I didn't tell you? So he said, your father said to me, leave it and move on. Leave it and move on. Okay. So, and that helped. Now, what's the meaning of the story? Why did the guy listen to Rabbi Bucket's father? Why did he go to the Rebbe? I don't know the meaning of the story. This is just conjecture. Just like the Baal Shem Tov helped this person who wanted to convert to Christianity. The Magid and the Alter Rebbe. They just reached into the guy's neshama, and it was through the efforts of their Chassidim davening for this person that they were able to help this neshama come back to Hashem. In a similar way, the Rebbe gave the blessing, but this man was such a devoted chassid that the light of the Rebbe, the light of Torah, the light of mitzvot, the light of truth, he said it with an M, he said it from his heart. Leave it and move on. And we don't really need that much to be the way we're supposed to be. We just need to say to ourselves, Dida Notzach, like the Rabbi Bucket, all of a shalom, told this man, move on. The similar way, each of us has things that prevent us from being the way we're supposed to be. We don't have to go to major, maybe some of us need to go to therapy and whatever, but the first step is, Dida Notzach. Victory is ours, to move away from wherever it was before, to move away wherever we were before, and say Dida Notzach, and to let go and to make a decision tonight to add in Torah and mitzvahs, and each of us in our mission in spreading Torah and mitzvahs in a way of Dida Notzach, in a way of, just like Dida Notzach then brought a victory and expansion in Lubavitch, so on a personal level, each of us has to make a decision tonight to add something more, to let the light of Torah and chassidus and of our Rebbe to spread to a new, farther horizon. But right now, let's take a break and let's watch the Living Torah for this week. Please put on the Living Torah.
It's loading right now.
Okay. While it's looking, say L'chaim. Guys, say L'chaim. Yehuda, say L'chaim. David, say L'chaim. Charlie, say L'chaim. It's a mayor. Reb Jeff. Reb Baruch. David, Tomech. Daniel. Yisrael Shagalo.
L'chaim L'bracha.
Go L'chaim. L'chaim L'bracha.
L'chaim L'bracha.
Hey, who was that?
It's a Bremel Rav.
Oh, Skech Avramo.
L'chaim, Rabbi. L'chaim, Chassidim. L'chaim.
L'chaim L'bracha.
Yeah, L'chaim.
You have to see Living Torah this week. We're going to put Living Torah in a second. Okay, here it goes.
In the summer of 1985, and we were watching the Rebbe's address, Teves Farbrengen, on Yud-Beis Tammuz, on cable TV. The Rebbe started speaking about the theft of the books in the library of his father-in-law.
In den Rishus von der Sieg der Reine von den Balagiyud. Und hat von dort ein Reis genommen, ist Foli, Bekulu, was sehen kann am Morgen Lahari.
The Rebbe was being very vocal in a kind of an uncharacteristic way in talking to Chassidim about this tremendous threat. There was the theft of the library and also what it represented in a spiritual way.
Keiner sich nicht gekonnt, mich scheil sein, das wird treffen. Misad der Linien ha Shinui Shibase. Und noch mehr der Linien ha Mishuni Shibase. Und noch mehr der Linien ha Zar Shibase. Und noch mehr der Zar ha Navin Shibase.
A while after the Rebbe began speaking about this, Lubavitch brought the thief to court, and a major court case ensued, which took the better part of 2 years. The theft of the library was not only a theft of precious books, but also a statement on what a Rebbe is.
Jeder Sefer seine und jeder Xaviat seine was haben sie gefunden in seine Schuss. Und hat es dann noch gelost, da in Rachmaninus Land zu sagen, als durchgegangen nach sehr vielen Jahren, in der Fall ist geworden etwas in der Maschine, ein Unterschied, Adrabe. Jeder Jahr wird ein Sofa in der Verbundenheit von jedem von uns mit Messie der Reino.
And the Rebbe was arguing that the life of the Rebbe is eternal. It goes on forever through his students, through his teachings being continued onward. And the Rebbe was taking the entire thing very, very personally. The Rebbe was going to the oil very often. We would say Tehillim after davening every morning. People were giving extra tzedakah. Many of the older people were fasting in order to effect victory for the Rebbe's court case. It was a late morning in the winter of 1987, and another teacher knocked on the door of our classroom. And he said, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a rumor that Tidan Notzach, the court case, has been won." Within a couple hours, our entire yeshiva picked up and went to New York. That kicked off a week of celebration. So many people were streaming to 770, both from the New York area and from out of town. The Rebbe really reciprocated the joy. The Rebbe, right away on Teves, on the day of the verdict, the Rebbe spoke publicly.
Einzige Bild, was wir können finden als Asibe zu dem Dover Hamalho, in welchem Matzav Hamalho und des Fakes, in welchem es auch gefunden, Gedea Duro Dru soll zukommen, kam Pom im Kocher und noch mehr Schlei Beherrach in Apotes Hamayonis Chutzo.
It was the night after the verdict. Ma'ariv was in the small Zelle, right off of the Rebbe's office. I'm this pre-bar mitzvah boy, 1 month before my bar mitzvah, so I have my first hat, but I'm still a kid below bar mitzvah. I'm a little shorter than everyone else, so I was standing in the front row. After davening, the Rebbe closes his eyes and begins to speak. Now, this was totally unexpected. There wasn't even a microphone there. Now, just as the Rebbe started speaking, there was a bacher right next to me, maybe 2 people over, probably about 18 years old. He pulled out of his pocket a micro cassette recorder, which at the time was super compact, probably about this big. And he hit record and he held it out toward the Rebbe.
Als wenn Berlin hätte, morgen von Ziel. Wir können mitnehmen, sehen
Within a couple minutes, Rabbi Groner put in a microphone. From then, you were able to hear it on the speakers in the room, and people outside were able to listen.
Und ich wollte, dass ich legen die Zettel, mehr nicht übergeben. Aber weglegen die Zettel in Berlin hätte, dort hat Neo, wo sich jeder schreiben, kol Horeize. Und da hat sich nicht was zu schämen, wenn sich mehr nicht, da schreibt sich bei den Menschen, alle denen sie, der Reino.
People were like, wow. Well, now is an opportunity to ask for anything that you want. And thousands of Jews from across the world sent in these requests. The fax machines in the offices upstairs were pouring out faxes nonstop. One would finish, it would ring, the next one would begin coming. Many people were calling and dictating their requests and giving over their names and their mother's names. I remember the next day, actually, when the Rebbe left for the oil, watching the Rebbe's car being loaded up with bags and bags and bags of panim, of letters, of requests. People were crowding around the Rebbe's car. And as the Rebbe backed out, somebody came running directly over to the Rebbe, to the car. The Rebbe asked Rabbi Krinsky to open the window. and took the letter from him. Even after that, requests kept on flowing in, and they were bringing these bags of letters to the Rebbe at the oil. I know of many people actually who received brachas then. There are people who had children, there are people who got out of life-threatening situations. Incredible brachas were unleashed during that period. In subsequent years, the Rebbe called Teves a Yom Skula Beis Ratzon, an auspicious day, and a special time.
This production is made possible through the generosity of the members of the GEM Foundation.
Aber Charles Hayid gefindt sich in einem Bild Rotzui. Und so viele, wenn steht noch erreicht davon, darf maßbar sein, andere, Halachas kann sich allein, aber das ist nicht eine Sache, was Chas v'Sholem Mikrehu, oder das ist nicht eine Sache, was Chas v'Sholem Kedei, wir soll bleiben bei dem Zahl mit dem Magmas Nefesh. Und das ist bechlal nicht eine Sache verbunden mit Bnei Odom. Auf Afol Pivo damals das gewähnt nach Farmatenteile. Halachas kama bis manenu Bachrimatenteile. Ist auch noch mehr begolui, was Yid und Teile, in das 91 gesagt, bis Yisrael reise, bekutschibrichu kulochad, abishas shlochani, am gefindt sich in Amal mit der Masse, was für Amal mit der Masse soll nicht sein, darf man betrachten, ab das Ayini von Ashlichus, und das ist Ashlichus, was lei Atem shlochani. Nur wo dann das Ekim oder Likim, und in der Gufe hat man nechet, die Linie, was man darf davon abnehmen, bis in a meise hohe Ikel, meise Bepel, a jeder Ried darf mäßig sein, in sein Piulis Boelo, und mäßig sein mit der Hakore Brura und a Idee Brura, als ist a Schliach von der Lekim. Was lechier, als der Rebischter das gekonton Befen Golui, und in der Nähe von Hawaii, von Midas Arachmim, wo der Rebischter gewollt, dass da soll gehen durch den Lewusch von der Lekim, aber die Kavoni derselbe, der Adarabe, wie bald das nimmt sich, von der Indien, Shebeseiser und Behellen, in das Ayerida Neisepes, für diese soll zukommen, in der Aliyah, bis in Aliyah, Shalei Be'erach, und in was besteht der Aliyah, a jeder Ried darf sich betrachten, als ist ein Schliach, und ein Schliach von dem Eibischten allein, und noch hecher, wie der Eibischte steht an der Kus Begoloi, nur wie steht in der Nord und in Unionen, und das sogar die Heere der Kim, wie Zimtzum, Adavki dorten soll Megale sein, und schluchische Leute Kemese, mit den ganzen Stühlen von Göttlichkeit, dass da viel dorten durch die Schlichus Leschaken, Schmei Schom, die Teres Abal Schemte, was Nesidere Native gegeben. Das immer die Schem ist die Geber Kimono, als wo kommt und was für ein Mann mit der Masse kommt, soll dorten Schmäh von den Mäbischen soll dort machen, dass in der Leben also sein Lischakin und das vom Loschen Mischkon und nicht das Ike Mischkon, bis wir Schachanti beseichen, ordentlich in seine eigene Dalle Dame ist und das gibt es echt ein Hesbe, die Fiera, am Rot Teinis in Magini, was man in der Ruf aufgetan, Deles wie nicht Leus. Und im Juchel sind nicht jeder Reine gekommen, bei Medina so. In den Minen, beim Juchel von Apostel Samayones, bis Echet und in Amefen, aber so durchnehmen der Apostel Sayadus, aber viele in alle bis zu Yadus, es Echet nicht, aber sie durchgenommen und das wird vereinzigt mit Nimis, mit dem Mayon, bis dem Mekel Mayon Chayim, mit Göttlichkeit allein, rechnen sich die Scheile, was hat man gedacht, rum dem Schlachani in dem Heim dem Masse, was hat noch Vater getan in der Ruf, gedeles wie nicht Fleus, wenn ich sie der Reine allein hat auf der Ruf Meid gewähnt, von ihm du hoch in Kuchen, da fahren wir darf mehr nicht, wie zuputzen die Knäppler, die Schaß mir will bringen, zu noch aggressiver Adi, aber das ist der einzige Sieber, und was mit der einzige Bild, was wir kommen gefunden als Sieber, zu dem Dover Hamavo, in welchem Matzer Hamavo, und des Fakes, in welchem es gefunden, Gedea Duru soll zukommen, kam Pom im Kocher und noch mehr Schlei Berg in Apostel Samayonis Futso, wir wollten das Song getan in der Teine, am ist nicht Poem, nicht aktiv und in der Teine am nutzt nicht die Xovim mit die Sforim, mit Divra de Kim Chayim, mit der Piulis von Apostel Sayadis Futso, bemerkt, dass Scheile zieht das Gehör zu dem Wort, Vechulu.
With materials from the Living Archive, established by the Rohr Family Foundation.
Okay, Chaim Avracha.
Chaim.
The Shliach to Paris, Rabbi Yazimov, has an incredible story about the 5th of Teves. I want to share the story with you from the video. Before I do, I just want to tell you a little context. When I was studying here in Yeshiva in Los Angeles in 1991, the Rebbe said that everyone should do something to bring about the redemption of all the remaining Svarim, remaining books which have not yet been redeemed, not yet been freed. And how can we do this? We could do this by everyone increasing and buying Svarim. The 5th of Teves is the Yontiv, is the holiday of the Svarim. The Svarim were released, and therefore everyone should increase their own personal libraries. This will be a blessing, not just for your own family and not just for your children, but also for the Jewish people at large, and also for the Rebbe's Svarim. This week we are reading about the dreams of Yosef. We just learned in last week's Torah portion. This week we're reading about the dreams of Paray, and these dreams brought about the exile. The Rebbe said that exile is like a dream. Just like in a dream you see two opposite things together, so too during the exile it's possible to go from one extreme to the other. For 1 minute you're involved in the most loftiest, holiest things, and the next minute in the opposite. And so too you can go from being involved in the most negative, ugly thing, and you buy a Farbrengen. That's because it's not because of it's a personal fault that we have. It's because that's how Hashem made the exile. The exile comes from, in the language of the Alter Rebbe, Yisudase Bahare Kodesh. It comes from holy mountains. It comes from a holy, higher, divine kind of energy. And that's why there is this dream-like experience where we shift from one end to the other end. I'll never forget when the Rebbe gave this instruction that everyone should buy books. So I used to go downtown Los Angeles every Friday, put on film with people, and the Rebbe, after the Rebbe gives his instruction, we share this with people, everyone should buy books. People were so excited, they literally, some guys closed their store and went to Chabad Atars, which is actually has a special sale now in honor of this special day, because they weren't religious, they didn't keep Shabbos, they didn't keep kosher, but the Rebbe said it's time to buy books. It's a dream. Eggel's a dream. We could jump from wherever we were before, and now it's a Teves. Let's go buy books. There's a very famous Hasidic mentor to many. I won't say his name right now, but he, Rabbi Chol, out his last name, he is from Paris, and when he visited the Rebbe once, I think it was the first time. It was the first time he visited the Rebbe. It was 1990. And he had a girlfriend in France. He wasn't keeping kosher, and the Rebbe gave him a lot of attention by the Shabbos gathering. The Rebbe told him to say L'chaim literally 30 times. 30 times. And after Shabbos, he was so excited by all this closeness, all this excitement, that he bought a hat. He don't want to look like everybody else, and he went the next morning to receive $1 from the Rebbe. As the Rebbe gave out dollars every Sunday, he went to get $1 from the Rebbe. The guy didn't even keep kosher, mitzvahs, a totally different environment. The Rebbe gives him $1. The Rebbe calls him back. The Rebbe says to him, the youth should be involved in teaching chassidus and spreading Judaism, especially to other chassidim. That's what just happened. This guy was not religious. They was now appointing him to be a leader of the other chassidim, teaching them chassidus. So he went back to Paris. He told his girlfriend, sorry, girlfriend, we can no longer see each other anymore. I became religious. You became religious? How did that happen? Well, I can't explain to you really. I just saw this rabbi and just was very touched by seeing him, and this made me want to become religious. All right. Okay, fine. But I want to find out more about this. Fast forward 3 years. He is about tshuva. He is fully religious. And he's introduced to meet someone also from France, also about tshuva. Who is it? It's his girlfriend. She had also decided to find out who this was and what had happened. She also saw the Rebbe, and that experience also meant something to her, and she became fully observant. So the time of exile is a time of kachon, time of dreams. It doesn't matter where we were a second ago. Now it's didan natzach. Now it's time of victory. Now it's a time to add in our libraries, add in our sfarim, and what we do makes a difference. This video you're going to see now shows how much we're involved. Just like the stories I shared with about the Amag the Alter Rebbe, the Chassidim said to him, they did something, we do something, it means something, and affects things in a more broader, grander scale than we think. Let's see this video. It means we're saying the L'chaim while waiting for the video to load. L'chaim v'bracha.
L'chaim.
L'chaim v'levracha.
Nachman, you got the video? You can do it? Okay, great.
Rabbi Mendel Azimov is the director of Bet Lubavitch in Paris, France. During the court case over the Chabad library, he was a yeshiva student. His father, Rabbi Shmuel Azimov, was the Rebbe's emissary to France. An excerpt from the Gem film, Linked.
Teves Tavshim Vav was a very, very hard time for Chassidim. It was the court case of the Sfarim. The Rebbe went to the El every day, morning and night, standing and praying. Did not eat a whole day. Chassidim all over the world, especially Shluchim, were looking for ideas how to give the Rebbe nachas ruach. My father made this very, very big gathering to see what they could add in different activities, putting on more tefillin on people, trying to get people to put on mezuzahs, and all different types of mivtzoim. And his name will be given over to the Rebbe with what he took on in the 10 mivtzoim. That Sunday, the Rebbe was planning to go to the Ale. The usually way was that the Rebbe used to go first to mikveh and then come back and go to the Ohel. And when he came back from the Ohel in the evening, he prayed Mincha and then prayed Mariv. So everybody knew that the day the Rebbe goes to the Ale, Mincha will be only in the evening or late afternoon. That Sunday, when the Rebbe came back from the mikveh, the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Klein, gave over the report that my father sent in of all the decisions they took. When the Rebbe looked at it, he told the masker, today he doesn't have to go to the Ale. The Rebbe came out to Mincha at 3:15, and this was a very, very big lesson for Chassidim around the world, how important is the effort that every individual could do to bring the Rebbe personally in Nachas Ruach.
That's the bottom line. The bottom line is that Dida Natzach is a story of each of us. The Natzach is our story. It starts by each of us doing something tonight and adding in our libraries and our Sfarim and adding in our connection. So let's say l'chaim that we should make a good decision tonight to add more in Torah, in mitzvahs, in 10 mitzvah campaigns, in our learning chassidus, and sharing with others. And before we fulfill any of these good decisions, we should already see Mashiach Tzidkeinu b'karav mamish. L'chaim, l'chaim, levrach.
Amen. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Amen. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Anyone will have something to share? That's what I had to share. Anybody else want to share something? Raise your hand if you have something to share. Speak now or hold your peace. All right. A good yontif.
Rabbi Levin.
Yes, sir.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, the first time Shabbos Pashas Vayigash Mem Zayin, 1988, 87, the end of 87, when the Rebbe said, right after the Shabbos, after the Danotzach,
Berurim was finished.
Sorry?
The end of Zmane Berurim.
Right. No, that's pretty much it. Geendig puts in the kleplach. You remember that?
Yes, that's
and
true.
And Rebbe also said, Ms. Great, we are ready to go into the Pesach English Shlishi.
Right.
Something like that, right?
Yeah. I remember that. I also noticed that. Wasn't there like you, but I remember reading that. And I also noticed that was the first time I ever said the buttons have been polished. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That was wow. That was.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. All right, a good yont, everybody.
Yontif.
Yontif.
Thank you very much.
Wait, you guys are leaving? The Farbrengen might continue.
Thank you.
Just gonna message Rabbi Levin really quickly. Please don't leave yet.
Good Tavach, who is speaking, if I may ask?
It's Menachem Krushansky.
Good Tavach, Menachem. Good Tavach, everybody. Yeah, it would be nice to have a little bit, people share what they remember, what they heard. Hey, Megalin Elitznoim.
You remember things and you heard things and I was a little kid except from singing and it was my first sight of drunk people lying in their vomit, so I never got drunk to that extent.
How old were you then, if I may ask?
I was almost 7. They pulled us, it was a little after recess, they pulled us out of school with my teacher, Rabbi Burston. He should be well and live long. He lives here in LA now. And,
he lives in
he was
LA?
my first grade teacher. Yeah, Rabbi Burston.
Oh, I thought you said Bergston. Oh, Burston, yeah.
He was, until this year, he was a teacher in Cheder to the first grade. I think he was 40 years a teacher in first grade.
God bless him. if you want, if I have I'm a shayfer blastman, you know what I mean? If you have a shayfer in your hand, you blow. You have a mic. So, the first Shabbos, I grew up in Crown Heights, Baruch Hashem, and the first Shabbos I really remember that people were in 770, like under the table and drunk, was the Shabbos after Rosh Chodesh Kislev Tavshin Mem Lamed Ches. The Shabbos, I think the Rebbe went home on Thursday. That Shabbos, there was a Kiddush in 770, and I've never in my life, even Simchas Torah, seen so much mashke being poured. It was, wow. Yeah. Look, the Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka said about the Ahave from the Chassidim to our Rebbe. And if I might mention a Chassidish word, I don't know who said this. Please correct me if anybody knows. They say, metaphorically speaking, that Shlomo HaMelech was not a Chassid. No, you know the word, Rabbi? Hello?
Yeah.
Rabbi Yitzchak, you know the word? Why they say that? They say that Shlomo HaMelech was not a Chassid. Why? Because if Shlomo HaMelech was a Chassid, he would have spoken, instead of speaking of
He didn't have a Rebbe.
What? He didn't have a Rebbe. I'm
Rebbe.
sorry. Thank you.
He had a father. David HaMelech was his father. He didn't have a Rebbe.
Right. Thank you for correcting me. Said David that Shlomo HaMelech did not have a Rebbe, because if he had a Rebbe, he wouldn't speak about Avas. Each Lisha, he will speak about the Ava of a Chassid to his Rebbe.
Yeah.
Might be a word from the Chassidim of the Rebbe, no?
It's interesting. I don't know. It's interesting because anytime that the Rebbe expected things from his Chassidim, he demanded things. And I think the Rebbe was a little bit, for instance, when with regard to shlichus, the Rebbe demanded of Chassidim at times that they should move on shlichus, whether it was for a period of time or for a lifetime. And so it was a condition, if back in the days, 40 years ago, when the Rebbe was conducting the marriages, being Masada Kiddushin for people, it was a condition.
1 second, how many years ago you said?
Not 40, I meant to say 70, 60 years ago.
The last time the Rebbe did officially was 62 years ago in your test, 1959. But in 1963, what's his name? Olba Shalom, Zalman Yafi from Manchester asked the Rebbe to be Masada Kiddushin for his daughter and Rabbi Lou. So that was the last time. But in general, the Rebbe stopped in I think your test. I think in 1959. Anyways, continue, no?
So there were two conditions. What was the two conditions if you wanted the Rebbe to be Masada Kiddushin?
One was that the Kala should take upon herself to wear shaitel.
Yes. And number two, that the couple should agree to go on shlichus.
Oh, right.
Without mentioning any names, there was somebody who agreed to it, and then his wife had no interest.
Whoa.
At the end, they went on shlichus. But you
know, there's a story, if I may mention.
But whatever. I want to bring out this point you were talking about before I forget. So you were saying the Ava from a Chassid to the Rebbe is so greater than the Ava between a husband and a wife.
We got to translate it in English. The Ava means the love, dedication, respect. You got to say a word in Hebrew. You got to say it in English. That's what I learned 20 years ago, 19 years when I moved to California. I learned that whenever I speak, if you mention a Hebrew word, you got to say it in English that people should understand what you're referring to. Please forgive me for interrupting you, Rabbi, but
it's okay. You can interrupt me. I just don't want to forget what I'm saying. So the Rebbe would always tell somebody when they were corresponding about shlichus, the Rebbe would always say, "Did you speak it over with your wife?" And I think the reason was that everyone was afraid that people would go and buy a ticket on an airplane and rent a house, and their wife wouldn't know about it necessarily. And they would just, because of their dedication to the Rebbe knew of this dedication, and he always he would always tell people, speak it over with your wife. Is it with your wife agreement? And anyway, go ahead.
Rabbi Farbrengen, you're speaking about weddings. I reminded myself a few stories about the Rebbe. The first one you say about Shlichus and about the Sheitel and the Rebbe being Mesad Kedushin. Mesad Kedushin means officiating at the wedding. So there's a story of a bocher who went into Yechidus, and he with his kala, and she said the Rebbe they wanted the Rebbe to be officiate, and they said, the kala said, and the Rebbe asked, well, did she wear a sheitel? And she said no. Most probably she was from, you have to understand, Lubavitch in 1940, when the Frierdiker Rebbe bought the building in the end of 1940, in the 40s and the 50s, even in the 50s, the Lubavitch community was not that big. Today, Baruch Hashem, we're in the thousands, thank God. But then you had very, very small amount of Anash who even lived in Crown Heights. Most of them lived in Bronzeville, like half an hour walk away. If you read the Shema of Elia Grossel, the writing about Yud Shvat, 1950, of Yud, he writes over there that that they had to run from Bronzeville to Crown Heights. It was like a half an hour walk at least. In any case, so most of the girls who, I mean, put it this way, I'm not Baruch Hashem. Thank God, I remember a little bit, and most of the mothers of my friends, in other words, my father came to America in 1959, but that's when we came. But I'm saying, but the Bachrim, the Lubavitcher Bachrim who came in the late 40s, in the early 50s, then most of them, they married girls from there was not that much Lubavitcher girls available to marry. So by them, it took a while, you understand? It took a while for them to understand what a Rebbe is, who a Rebbe is, and especially to learn about our Rebbe. That explains, not God forbid, that these people, they didn't want to listen to the Rebbe. They had no understanding what a Rebbe was. Anyway, the story was that a week or two later, the Chassan wrote a letter to the Rebbe that's saying that his Kala is maskim, she agrees to wear a sheitel after after the wedding. Don't catch me on the word after the wedding. From the wedding to wear a sheitel. And they asked if the Rebbe could be Mesad Kedushin. So the Rebbe answered something to, the answer? So the Rebbe answered something to the effect that now it's too late. He says, if you want me to come is one thing, but if you want me to come because you want me to come with what I represent, it's already too late. You heard that story, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's a story of the Rebbe's Abbas Yisrael. I mean, it's unbelievable. They say a story that one time the Rebbe was in his room, and Rabbi Groner happened to go in, to bring in letters, whatever, and they heard, and there was a chuppah outside 770. So the Rebbe turned to Rabbi Groner and said, "How come there's no music?" So Rabbi Groner ran out and he came back to the Rebbe and he told the Rebbe that it's a poor chassan kala, poor family, and they don't have money. They don't have money for music. So the Rebbe, they say the Rebbe immediately gave him $500 and he said, "Go make sure that they have music and pay for it." You heard that story?
No, continue.
Again, it's 1 for 1, 2 for 1 for 2, 2 for 1, whatever. But you got to bring it out in me.
Okay.
I'll tell you a story.
Can I just ask a little clarification on the Rebbe part where he said, "If you want me, then." It sounds like very personal. So he doesn't want what you represent. I mean, if you're gonna have a dignitary, when you invite, let's say, a dignitary to your wedding, you don't feel. I mean, I know it's funny because we talk about the Rebbe and being like this is kashrus and being super close, and we welcome the Rebbe to be in our home, and he's part of our family. But I just find it funny with the response the Rebbe gave because it's like it's insulting if it's what I represent, the fact that I'm the leader.
No, the other way around.
Okay.
David, let me explain to you. The way I understood this, look, I heard this as a child. The way I understood the pshat, or maybe I heard the explaining the pshat, the Rebbe said like this: if you want me, that's not a problem. Something like that. But if you want me because you want what I represent, in other words, those who go with me, and it means all the Rabbeim, you understand? Then the Rebbe said it's already too late. Maybe it was a day or two before the wedding. I don't remember the exact, maybe people do remember, but I don't. But the point of it here is that the Rebbe is saying, if you want me is one thing, but if you want what I represent, in other words, all the Rabbeim, as we all know, that all the Rabbeim included the previous Rebbe in them. Like the Rebbe is told, in one of the first letters, but also it's a Sicha. In 1951, the Rebbe wrote about the Frierdiker Rebbe, wrote or spoke by Farbrengen, Nishmo soy bi. His neshama is in me. That means that all the Rebbes are connected. And the Rebbe needs to make, I don't understand what that means. We don't understand. Look, there were times that the Rebbe answered people on letters, and I mentioned him on the oil, and we know that the Rebbe didn't go those 3 days in the oil. Again, what that means, I don't know. This is higher. This is a Rebbe. This is much higher than our understanding and our grasping. But, hey, Teves is a day that we have to acknowledge that one of the things why the Rebbe took it I'm sorry, not acknowledge. We have to understand and see, I have a situation where I think in Yiddish and I immediately have to try to find a corresponding word in English. And I, Baruch Hashem, went to Torah. So sometimes it takes me a while to find the correct word in English and the correct pronunciation. But the point I want to bring out is...
I'm just trying to take a...
Go ahead. Let me answer.
Lesson.
Go ahead. Yeah. Let me answer your question. Go ahead.
So I'm saying I'm trying to take a lesson from what the Rebbe is saying, because I can think of many lessons. The problem is they might not be the right one. So like one lesson I'm thinking about has to do with like the way you properly like invite or respect people. So I don't know if that's what the Rebbe was getting at. There's a proper way to make an invitation. I don't think he was talking again, right? I don't think he was, right? So I'm just trying to say that's the first thing, that what you're saying in terms of what he represents with all the Rebbes that come before him. So you're getting like the epitome of chassidus. You're getting the seventh generation, the one
exactly.
Supposed to bring Mashiach. So again, if it's the one to bring Mashiach, I just don't understand why would that not be like what you can do. You can't invite Mashiach last minute. I mean, I'm trying to understand what that means. Like, I think we always can invite him last minute.
I have a secret for you.
Huh?
David, I have a secret for you. You're not the only one of those to understand.
I'll tell you where it comes from. To be fair, it comes from a place where and we're all familiar with Rabbi Moshe Levin.
Right.
One of the things that he drives home the point of, and it's why I'm asking you, is he hates so much when someone says something fantastical but they can't explain it. And his classic example is when somebody says, you know how amazing Kriyas Yamsuf, even the handmaidens, they couldn't see, what the highest of prophets, what Yirmiyahu could see or Yeshayahu, like, because what does he say at the end? He says, so you tell somebody that, what did you tell them? You literally told them, I don't understand what Yirmiyahu saw. I also don't understand what the handmaiden saw. So I'm just telling you a bunch of I don't understand. You know what I mean? So I think there's something that and you're not speaking it out. And that's why I'm trying to get it out of you. I'm not, does that make sense? I know that there's
I'm telling you.
It's not the first time I heard it. I've heard that story many times. And I want to know, like, what are we talking? The tackle is like supposed to take out of that, It's a good story, and I love it. It's just one of those things where like I still don't get how to internalize what it properly.
So there's two answers I could give you. One answer is that this is the first time that I'm speaking to a community without seeing who I am. Besides over here, the one or two people who I see who they are. I don't know. I don't think I ever met you, David. Don't take it, God forbid, as an offense. I'm saying when a person speaks in a community and you know the faces, you know the people, you know what to say. You understand? Over here, I was just thinking, Rabbi Levin had a beautiful Farbrengen, and Rabbi Shemeir, asked me to say a few stories. So I figured I'm speaking about, amongst people who will not ask me too many questions, David. But the truth is, you're right. I agree with you. Because the Rebbe every time would sing by the Farbrengen, the Rebbe, especially in the Shabbos Farbrengens, the Rebbe would say, and what's the Bechen? What's the Poel Yetzer? What's the Maiso Iker? You're right. What is the point we learned from that? But at the same token, here I have an answer for you. The mitzvahs are divided in three parts, right? Edus, Chukim, and Mishpatim. So you have what does our commentaries say? Our holy commentaries, you have Mishpatim. The Gemara says that even if the mitzvah of Geneva and Zelle, of stealing and thieving, was not given, we would learn from an ant how not to steal, correct? Then you have Chukim. Then you have mitzvahs that are, the Eibusha said, like the mitzvah of Parah Aduma. Like Shlomo HaMelech said, I said I'll become smart, and I saw how far it is from me. So you'll forgive me for saying the following. This is not personal. Sometimes when you hear a story of a tzaddik, the person saying it, number one, did not think about, connecting it at Ma'aseh with a call to action. And number two, the most important, what I'm trying to say is, sometimes the story is so geschmack, such a beautiful story, that you get overwhelmed by the beauty of the story, and not every time you can bring it down in what we learn from it in action. You're right. I agree with you. They're the same way when I came to California 19 years ago. I learned that whenever word I say has to be translated in English, from now on, I'm making a hey Teves Hachlote. If I say a story, it has to be a story that I could explain something about it. Or what the Rebbe said. If not, I'm not going to say it. And I thank you, Reb David, for bringing up this point.
You're welcome. You're also being very kind.
What else somebody say?
Guys, I recently heard a story in a Teves Farbrengen that maybe would explain a little bit the question that was asked. The story was, Rabbi Heller said that Rabbi Heller is the Rosh Kollel in Crown Heights, and for many years was on the Bezdin of, or is on the part of the Bezdin of the.
He was until Znebach, his wife, passed away, I think, in 93, 94, yeah.
So somebody in Lakewood once called him frantically that his son, who was a big lamdan, something happened to him, and he couldn't learn anymore. And out of desperation, he called Rabbi Heller. He wanted Rabbi Heller should write to the Rebbe, ask a bracha. He said, Rabbi Heller, the Rebbe is a very smart man, and he thinks the Rebbe might be able to help him. So he answered, Rabbi Heller told him, he said, I'm not writing for you to the Rebbe, because we don't write to the Rebbe because he's a very smart man. That's not a reason we write to the Rebbe.
I'm sorry, but whose noise is coming from?
What? I missed what you said.
That's about all your background noise.
My background noise. Other people by the Farbrengen. You know, by Farbrengen, a lot of times there's a speaker and other people speak in middle. All that's in my house. So the next day, the fellow called Rabbi Heller again, and he said, "You know what? I know the Rebbe is a big tzaddik. Maybe you could ask him." Or maybe the first time he called, he asked Rabbi Heller if he could write him. Rabbi Heller understood. I think the first time he just asked if he could. Rabbi Heller understood that he's out of desperation. He's trying everything he could, but this is someone who has a very different, hashkafa, and he doesn't believe in a Rebbe, and he doesn't know. He told him he doesn't, he's not going to write to the Rebbe on his behalf. The next day he called. He said, "Well, you know what? I think the Rebbe could help me because the Rebbe is a very smart man," or something to that effect. And he said, so he said to him, "I'm sorry. I still don't think you're ready to receive a bracha from the Rebbe. I don't think you, meaning to say, I don't think you're ready to really turn to the Rebbe with your whole being." Which is what makes you prepared to receive a bracha from the Rebbe. It's one thing to ask a bracha. It's another thing it's one thing that Rebbe gives a bracha. It's another thing that we receive a bracha. And when we ask a bracha, as we know as chassidim, the asking also has to be with a pnimius. It's not. I think it's a hayem yem that something to that effect. Anyhow, the fellow called him the day after, and he said, "I'm ready to ask the Rebbe for. I want a bracha from the Rebbe. I understand he's the tzaddik hadar." So he says, "Oh, with this in mind, if this is the way you're asking, I'll write to the Rebbe." He wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave Rabbi Heller an answer with the name of a doctor that he should take his son to. He brought his son to this doctor, and he helped him. So I think this idea could be applied, perhaps, to to many areas, to many on a personal level, to many areas. And I think it could apply a little bit to the story that you mentioned before about the Rebbe declining to officiate by someone's wedding. Perhaps, and I don't know who the story happened to, or
I also I never heard.
It's not important, or what was going through his mind. But perhaps, came close to his wedding, and he felt like his wedding is going to be missing, and out of desperation, he was sort of pleading with the Rebbe, but he didn't. It didn't really change by him.
Maybe
I don't know if that's the shot.
The story. You finished, Rabbi?
Finished, yes.
So we'll continue soon. I think maybe I'm having a drop of chokhmah. Now I'm trying to understand. There is a story, and I guess in the 1950s or 60s, was Lubavitcher in Germanik Heights, who didn't have a beard. So on Yechidus of another chassid, the Rebbe asked chassid A to try to influence chassid B to have a beard, to stop shaving his beard. They were chassid A and chassid B were very good friends, and he went out of Yechidus, and whenever in the next few days he spoke to chassid B, and he mentioned to him about a beard. The guy, whatever, it went through a long time, and again the same thing. The chassid A was on Yechidus, and the Rebbe again mentioned to him to influence chassid B to have a beard. So again, chassid A goes to chassid B, and he is trying to influence him. So at a certain point, chassid B turns to chassid A and says, "Leave me alone. What do you want from me?" So chassid A couldn't contain himself, and he told him, "Because the Rebbe told me to." Okay, fine, then I'll stop shaving my beard. Okay. Sometime later, chassid A was on Yechidus by the Rebbe. And he told the Rebbe the whole story. And the Rebbe wasn't that much happy about it, because he said, "I wanted, I think the Lashon war, the board, sein board soll sein von ihm allein, nicht von mir. Jetzt ist das mein board." he said, and in English it means, the Rebbe said, I wanted that his beard should be his beard, because now it's my beard. It's like the same derech, like the Rebbe said, Chof Ches Nissen, 1991, and even when we scream, as Mosai, we scream b'fnei hatzivui. In other words, it's not something coming out from the depth of our heart that we want Mashiach. It's because that we know that the Rebbe wants us to ask for Mashiach. That's why we're asking for Mashiach. What do you think about my analogy?
I like it. It's good.
Thank you. Who is speaking?
Okay, David, here.
Reb David. And who is this beautiful Yid I see now?
Shalom Aleichem. I'm Eli Cowan, Shliach
From?
California.
From where are you from?
Arcata, California.
Arcadia. Oh, the mikveh is built already?
We are just about to start the groundbreaking.
You're just starting the groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Should I send you a little fork?
Yeah, you could start digging with it.
You know, I'll tell you a personal story. I never told this to anybody besides my wife years ago. We were kids, myself and my brother Mendel. We lived on Eastern Parkway next to Schenectady Avenue. So one day we learned in Chumash about planting maybe I learned Behar. I don't remember. I was maybe 7 years old, 6 years old. Mendel was 3 years younger, 4 years old. So we decided to plant an apple tree on Eastern Parkway. So we asked my mother for a treifa knife. I'm sorry, for a big tray, for a treifa fork, and a fork that is not kosher, because, you know, you start digging in the earth, you don't know what you're going to touch. And we took like 4 or 5 pits of an apple, and we dug maybe an inch deep, and we covered it up. I remember like 20 years later going by that place. And guess what? There's no apple tree there. Because, I just reminded myself, I'm not making fun of you. I'm saying when you dig for a mikveh, you don't dig with a tefet fork, 1 inch.
Yeah, don't send him no fork. Send him $100.
There you go.
As soon as they finish, they have most of the money they need. As soon as they have all the money, they're going to start and finish within a year.
So we're just waiting for one last box to be checked on the permits, and then the builder's ready to go.
Then there's going to be a new vacation destination for everybody.
We'll also have 2 guest rooms on top of the mikvah for people who want to check out the redwoods.
Yes, you'll be able to go to Redwoods with your wife, and you'll have a kosher mikveh. Right now, I don't think there's anything close to Redwoods whatsoever.
Yosef Shigalo. Is your wife's maiden name Ekman?
Rabbi Yosef.
Yes, sir.
There's a question posed to you.
I answered. Oh, suddenly I got muted. Yes, that is true. My wife lived there.
Okay. So you have a strong connection to Humboldt.
I have a humble connection to Humboldt. Yeah. My wife lived there 20 years.
Continuing the shlichus that she started.
That's very kind of you to say.
That's true.
Yeah, my wife says it's true. Wow.
An Aleph, teach an Aleph.
Learn an Aleph, teach an Aleph, she says.
Yep.
Wow. Kol hakavod, kol hakavod. So, the stories about the Rebbe, a beautiful story, actually stories about Chabad, chassidim, the Alter Rebbe, Tanya. I just had a story pop in my head. There's a shliach in Belgium, in Antwerp, called Rabbi Shabtai Slabetitsky. I think that's his name. The story goes that there was a Ben Torah in his town who he got to know, and he asked him to learn Tanya with him. And Ben Torah refused. After a while, a year or two, one day this Ben Torah comes in the Chabad house and says, Rabbi, remember you offered to learn with me Tanya? I want to learn Tanya. So they make up a time and he's so happy. The Shliach is so happy. Baruch Hashem, another Yid will learn Tanya. But while they were learning, whatever, he asked him, tell me, what made you change your mind? So he told him the following story. A few weeks before, the Shliach has a little 5 or 6 year old daughter. And this Ben Torah, this yeshivish guy, also has a little daughter. They were at a shabbos party or a birthday party. They were together. And suddenly this 5-year-old non-Chabad girl tells to the Shliach's daughter, I want you to know that my father's Rosh Yeshiva hates your father's Rebbe. And the little 5-year-old Lubavitcher girl turns to this girl and says, I want you to know that my father's not, my father, my Rebbe loves your father's Rosh Yeshiva. So this Ben Torah said, if a chinuch, an education that teaches little kids of 5,